The Supreme Court is telling California that it cannot enforce coronavirus-related restrictions against limited home-based religious worship, including Bible studies and prayer meetings. On Friday, justices sided with the plaintiff's emergency appeal. The majority cited recent rulings reversing state COVID-19 restrictions, which violate First Amendment protections. The majority opinion rebuked the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals for errors in such cases. Joining us now is Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, director of the Conscious Project. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. Always so great to see you. So tell us, what stood out the most to you as far as this case and the Supreme Court's decision?
Well, there's many things, Tracy. First off, it was the court, like you said, rebuking California for assuming the worst about people when they go to worship. And this is the fifth time that the court has also kind of given a smackdown to the lower courts of appeals that are reviewing these COVID-related restrictions in California on the right to worship. So it's a really big, important win. It seems to be a repetition of what I believe to be a very important pro-religion movement within the Supreme Court and helping these governments to understand how to balance restrictions on our movement during the pandemic.
In a statement by the majority in this case, the Ninth Circuit's failure to grant an injunction pending appeal was erroneous. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely, absolutely. After the Supreme Court guided earlier on in this year, explaining that the right to worship is sacrosanct and that religious behavior, exercise, and worship couldn't be treated kind of as a second thought or as a hobby. Compared to other commercial activities or other activities that aren't given the same kind of protection under the Constitution. This decision comes at a very important time, and it seems like hopefully all governments are going to stand up and take notice.
Yeah, and also, according to the Supreme Court, the state cannot treat freedom of religion settings more restrictively, that is, than other settings like grocery stores or restaurants. Tell us why that's so important.
Well, it's very important, especially in the context of this case. We were looking earlier this year at issues where indoor worship in California was prohibited or barred, or there were restrictions in New York on percentage and capping the number of people who could go to church compared to who could go to a big box store. This is reminding us that the right to worship and free exercise is given special protection under the Constitution. The other thing that I found very important about this case is that the right to worship isn't just exercised in houses of worship, but can be exercised in our own homes as well.
I want to switch gears here just a little bit. As you know, President Biden is now forming a bipartisan commission to study the expansion of the Supreme Court. I'd like to get your thoughts on that and what it would mean if indeed more justices were added to the bench and how that could ultimately impact religious freedom.
You know, Tracy, that's a great question. And I think if we look at the last 15 years in particular, there's been some recent studies coming out about how the Supreme Court has been incredibly pro-religion. And when we look at, for example, how the court has responded to the Little Sisters of the Poor and their decision to serve the poor consistent with their faith, in spite of the contraceptive mandate. If we look at the desire of families to send their kids to religious schools and benefit from scholarship programs, this Supreme Court currently has never been a stronger advocate for the First Amendment protection of the free exercise of religion. The commission to expand the court is a dangerous one in my mind by adding additional members to the court who may not take that same position. And so I've got to say, when it comes to the protection of religious freedom, there's no reform that's needed at the Supreme Court.
Andrea, we have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today. Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, director of the Conscious Project. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tracy.